can remember growing up and hearing many seasoned saints saying, "What's done in the dark will come to the light." I must admit, at the time, I had no idea of its meaning. I've since learned, as many of you watching, there's some truth in that statement. In today's message, we'll hear about an unidentified married woman who found herself in a situation that seems to add some meaning to the aforementioned statement. If we're meeting for the first time, I'm Donnice Tabor, pastor of Divine Church in Metro Atlanta, where we believe it's all about His will, His way, His word. Let us now receive this short but thought-provoking message. John the 8th chapter, verses 2 through 9. And early in the morning he came again unto the temple, and all the people came unto him. And he sat down and taught them. And the scribes and Pharisees brought unto him a woman taken in adultery. And when they had set her in the midst, they said unto him, Master, this woman was taken in adultery, in the very act. Now Moses in the law commands us that such should be stoned. But what sayest thou? This they said, tempting him, that they might have to accuse him. But Jesus stooped down, and with his finger wrote on the ground, as though he heard them not. So when they continued asking him, he lifted up himself and said unto them, He that is without sin among you, let him first cast a stone at her. And again he stooped down and wrote on the ground. And they which heard it, being convicted by their own conscience, went out one by one, beginning at the eldest, even unto the last. And Jesus was left alone, and the woman standing in the midst. And for a point of emphasis, that verse 4 in your hearing again. They said unto him, Master, this woman was taken in adultery, in the very act. If you'll allow me just a few moments to take a trip back down memory lane, I'll be transparent with you and share a quick personal story, but don't judge me now. When I was in high school, one night in the dead of winter, I snuck out my parents' car in the middle of the night. Now, I took this risk, you got to understand, because I wanted to see one of my female friends. You should have seen me. I thought it all out. I rolled the car down the steep driveway in neutral and then started the car once it was on the street. This part of my plan worked perfectly. However, while I was out, it started to snow. So I'm thinking, no problem. Once the car is back up under the carport, the snow can actually work in my favor and cover my tracks. Well, as fate would have it, once I got back inside the house, it stopped snowing. Can you even believe it? The remainder of the night, not a single snowflake fell. The next morning, the evidence of my mischief was visible down the entire driveway. So I guess you could say I was caught in my tracks. Being able to somewhat relate to the woman in today's lifted text, here once again our point of emphasis, verse 4, which reads, They said unto him, Master, this woman was taken in adultery, in the very act. I want to witness to you for the next few moments from this thought. Caught in the very act. Caught in the very act. Here in today's lifted text, we have an unidentified woman who is married and an unidentified, unmentioned man who have decided to hook up. They have decided to secretly get together for some sexual activity. In today's slang, I guess we could say they had gotten together to Netflix and chill. No doubt, they had carefully planned it all out. We're not told if they met up earlier that night before and spent the night together, nor if they got together early in the morning they got caught. What we do know is their dirty little secret was no longer a secret by morning. The first thing I noticed seeping from the text was their capture mentioned in verse 3a, and it reads, And the scribes and Pharisees brought unto him a woman taken in adultery. Wow. You mean to tell me that Jesus is in the temple teaching, and these religious leaders, these biblical scholars, these students of the law, these church folks, these scribes and Pharisees have nothing better to do than to invade the privacy of two consenting adults? Man, unbelievable. Now, don't get me wrong, man. Don't judge me. Don't get me wrong. I'm not condoning their actions and saying that their behavior is acceptable and harmless, but I've been led today to focus on the religious folk found in our text today. The takeaway here in the text is this: we as saints must never become so sanctimonious that we seek to expose others' sin while forgetting our own. For the Bible says in Romans 3:23, "For all have sinned and come short of the glory of God." The second thing I noticed leaking from the text was the criticism recorded in verses 3b down to verse 5, where John writes in 3b, "And when they had set her in the midst," verse 4, "they said unto him, Master, this woman is taken in adultery in the very act." Verse 5, "Now Moses in the law commands us that such should be stoned. But what sayest thou?" The nerve of them to express their disappointment in this woman's adultery, while at the same time never even mentioning the man. How dare them in their self-righteousness to criticize her instead of showing compassion? How dare them to reveal instead of restore? How dare them to condemn her instead of comforting her? The takeaway here in the text is that never be so quick to criticize, but instead exercise the ministry of restoration and reconciliation. The final thing I noticed pouring from the text was their conviction found in verse 9, which reads, "And they which heard it, being convicted by their own conscience, went out one by one, beginning at the eldest, even unto the last, and Jesus was left alone, and the woman standing in the midst." The takeaway here in the text is our own conscience can and should convict us when we ourselves are in the wrong. In closing, I can remember growing up and hearing my mother say, "Be sure your sin will find you out." That is to say that sin is so serious that it doesn't even matter if others become aware of yours or not. The fact is, you cannot escape its consequences. So don't get caught in the very act.